Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always by my co-host Nick Filato. Today we got a special guest. We don't do a lot of guests during training camp time, but the other day we mentioned Emory on the show, and a couple of you in the comments are like, "What about trying to get Emory on?" And I know Emory a little bit. We met last year, but we've been talking online before that. And I just hit him up, and I'm like, "You want to talk Giants with us a little bit?" He's a nice guy, so he said yes. So here we are talking Giants football. He's Emory Hunt. You can still get the 2025 draft guide at footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. And let me tell you, within that draft guide is over 1,000 scouting reports. And I remember 2 years ago just needing to know these Giants UDFAs. You need to know something about these Giants UDFAs. And you could Google, but it's not the same. You get an actual scouting report. Emory puts in a ton of time into the players that you are seeing now on the Giants competing for roster spots. Now, look, we got Neighbors down. We've got Wando Robinson out. We're going to have some UDFAs competing for these wide receiver spots, potentially getting even some first-team reps. So it's great stuff to know. Glad to have Emory on the show. He also does a bunch of work for CBS Sports HQ, near and dear to my heart. And you can follow him on Twitter at FBALL Game Plan. That's football, basically, game plan. So, Emory, thanks for joining us tonight. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fine, man. I appreciate y'all having me on.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. And go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say, Emory, it's I saw you at training camp a few days ago. It's great to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining. But I wanted to ask you, since you're not necessarily a New York Giants person, somebody who covers the New York Giants per se. Now, if anybody's watching on YouTube, you see Emory shirts, his czar of the playbook. The dude is proficient when it comes to the NFL and knowing the X's and O's and all of that. So, Emory, I just wanted to ask you, just from a vibe standpoint, since you've been at training camp the last couple of years, how is 2025 different than 2024 and 2023 when it comes to just the overall feeling in New York Giants camp?
You know, when I put out that tweet, it was basically referring to how it didn't feel like everyone was walking on eggshells around the building, around the facility. Players seemed a little bit loose. Dayball seems a little bit loose, more so than he did in years previous, maybe outside of the first year he got there in 2022. So everything just seems a little bit more relaxed. And then when you kind of combine that with what we saw on the field that first day of practice, it was like, okay, usually it was one side of the ball just dominating, just steamrolling the other side, right? And there was never a back and forth. But on that first day, you saw, first day in pads, or maybe I can't remember if it was the first day in pads or was the first day. It probably was the first day in pads, the first day of camp, where they threw it. Russell threw a touchdown pass. I want to say the Neighbors on a bang gate in the red zone, and it was like, wow, that was a dope pass. Then the next play, or maybe a second play later, they try to go back to that play again, and this time Paulson Adebo breaks the ball up. So you normally didn't see win for win. It was usually one side of the ball is just completely better than everybody else. But that was the first day, and this has carried over all throughout camp. So it's a tug of war. And some people say, well, that means that some sides they're both inconsistent. Like, no. You want wins on both sides. You don't want to see one side dominate the other. And if you're seeing both sides winning, it gives off the impression that both sides have gotten better and they're making each other better. So that's when I was talking about vibes, it's like, man, it just feels different out here.
Yeah, it's interesting because you said it, the vibe feels different. And after that, a few others, Mike Garafolo, Judy Batista, even Kay Adams, who was there, said she felt like the vibe was different. Malik Neighbors said the vibe was different when she asked him about it. And he referenced the quarterbacks that were in here. So that's his words, not ours. But what we thought was important was to get your perspective from Giants camp, because you're a national reporter, Emory. You don't cover you cover the Giants during camp and you do a lot with the Giants, but you're not like Nick and I will admit it. We cover the Giants. We stay objective more so than we feel than almost any podcast, and that's been our thing. But we're also fans. Like, deep down, we are fans of this team, and it's good to get the perspective. Sometimes when you just listen to us or when we talk to each other, it's a bubbled perspective in our minds where it's just from that Giants point of view. So I'm glad to get your thoughts on this team from an outside point of view. It seems like it couldn't be more objective than that. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, since you are really good with the rookies, is what are your thoughts so far on this rookie class that's coming in? You can go individually or you can just go kind of overall with the feel of them.
Well, here's the thing. And to your point about, being objective, this time last year, I want to say it was around practice, maybe 3 or 4. I'm standing on the side and, you know, and I was talking to another person with the Giants, and it was like, what do you think about the team this year? I was like, they won't win no more than 3 games.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, it's not, no way. I'm like, I put up the schedule on the phone. I was like, find me where they're going to be better at quarterback than 3 teams on this. And so,
right.
And oh no, they'll win at least 7. And so we got about week 3 into the season. Like, man, you might be right. I was like, yeah. And so I'm saying that to say this year, I'm this was in OTAs. I'm like, this is a 8, 7, 8, 9 win team.
Wow.
Like just by seeing just body types at that point, because you're not dealing with pads. And then so when you look at what they've added, I said this before. This is the best draft class collectively that we've seen from Joe Shane, from the draft picks, and this is his best crop of undrafted free agents. They're going to have some hard decisions to make, and that's what you kind of want. That's the mark. That's what makes the Philadelphia Eagles the Philadelphia Eagles. And they drafted well. They bring in quality undrafted free agents, and they kind of make things difficult in terms of who to keep and who to stash. The Giants are going to have something like that on offense, at least. More so there than defense. But overall, you talk about I'll start with Dart, because I feel like Dart is in a situation that if you pull up my scouting report from Jackson Dart and my scouting report from Matt Corral,
okay,
3 separate years, 4 separate years, same report. But here's why that's both bad and good. It's bad in the sense that tells you that you're coming out of an offense that you're seeing the same deficiencies. And the good part is Matt Corral was in the midst he's drafted and thrown into the mix to try to be a starter. He clearly wasn't ready for that coming out of Ole Miss's offense, and it showed. Then he also combined with the injuries. So he flamed out of Carolina. So he got a chance to start in a UFL, and those same deficiencies were still there, like trying to handle pressure, trying to, manage a game, trying to make certain throws, trying to be efficient, still was having the same things. For Dart, he won't have to do that because there's no reason and no rush to push him out of there. So if you're Dayball, you have the perfect situation. You have 2 quarterbacks that can start, raise your floor of your football team to help your offense function, while what we're seeing at camp, working behind the scenes to develop your guys, so therefore you could break him down to build him back up. So we've seen, Jackson Dart have multiple days where he's the second quarterback, and then some days they play, hey, okay, Winston, you're QB2, you get about 3 plays, Dart, you're in there, right? Just to kind of keep him mentally sharp, right? But you're seeing how the process of working and developing a quarterback without the pressure of starting him is going for them, and that's what you kind of want. And then when you look at, Scatterbo is a fantastic pick because him and Tracy are one and the same. They both can catch the ball in the backfield. Tracy obviously was a receiver, but Scatterbo has really good hands. They can be a 1A, 1B, help strengthens the run game. Said this in OTAs and rookie minicamp. When you look at Darius Alexander, he just looks. If you'd have told me Darius Alexander was a 4-year veteran at 24 years old, I was like, yeah, that's about right, because he looks the part. And so you combine, maybe because his tape was so good at Toledo, probably because he was 24, 25 years old. But at the end of the day, you do what you have to do out there. And so he can play right now. Abdul Carter's clearly helps keep them so versatile and so dynamic. Shrinks the field. I said this 2 days ago, where most teams, NFL, because of the hash marks, you're playing a game right in the middle of the field anyway. But when you're facing a team that has Burns, Thibodeau and Carter, it makes, on defense, it makes it like you're playing on an arena field because they cover so much ground, because they're so long, they're so athletic, and that's going to be a problem. Combined with Dexter Lawrence, combined with Darius Alexander, like that is going to be a significant challenge for those guys. And so when you think about all of those, Marcus Bowe is another situation where, hey, we can kind of bring this guy in, bring him along slowly, let him work guard, let him work tackle, let him get acclimated to the consistency of NFL power and NFL explosiveness. and allow this guy to develop and become what we want him to become. So, overall, I just think that the Giants have done a really good job drafting, and also, and it just, you talked about undrafted free agents. We're seeing, Dalen Cambry from Louisiana, do his thing and perhaps make the team as a core special teamer, because that's what he was with the Raging Cajuns. But he's showing that he could play ball, and he had big catches in minicamp and OTAs. Got, and Bo Collins, unprompted praise from Russell Wilson. He's an undrafted guy at Notre Dame. I graded him highly coming out of Notre Dame. He was open a lot, but their offense was just kind of like, QB power. He wasn't throwing the football, but he was always open. Jordan Bly was down at the Tropical Bowl, was the best receiver down at the Tropical Bowl this past January, baking these DBs. And he's, Dre Bly's son. And he's not the fastest, but he's open a lot. But you're seeing both Cambry and Jordan Bly working a lot with the twos, and sometimes with they on the threes, obviously, but sometimes they're in there with the twos. So, and then you got Juice Wells, who's played with, Dart, and you got Daquan Felton, whom I've called his game when he was at Norfolk State before he transferred to Virginia Tech. So it's like they've done a really good job. Thomas Fidone had a big pancake block out there today.
Oh, nice.
On Davidson. And so you like that these guys are getting after it. And like I said before, and I said again, this is the best class Joe Shane has gotten.
Emory, did you say that was a pancake block on DJ Davidson from Fidone?
Granted, again,
you're
Davidson was a little bit banged up, got back in there, and a couple of series later, on a down block, he kind of caught him on the side, but got him on the ground, to where coaches was just like ecstatic, like running up, dapping him up after the play. But hey, that counts as a pancake. He got him on the ground. You know what I'm saying? And so you like to see that from those guys. And just seeing how, everybody's amped for everybody else making plays has been good.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we all love to work out. The summer's coming around. You want to look good in your bathing suit. But in order to enhance your workout, you want to go and use MitoPure from Timeline. This is a great product. When I started using it, it makes me feel stronger, gives me more energy. I recover quicker. I'm in my 30s. I still have the energy to work out. And if you want that energy, you really should give Timeline's MitoPure a shot and work it into your routine. The great year of 2025 is your year to be the best, most energized, most revitalized you. MitoPure promotes cellular renewal and mitochondrial health to address common signs of aging at the root. MitoPure is the research-backed innovation that unlocks your fullest potential. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure right now. So go to timeline.com/banter. It's timeline.com/banter. That's TIMELINE.
Emory, I wanted to follow up on something, just because, I feel like you've had a good beat on this Giants quarterback situation for a really long time now. You mentioned last year in camp, you saw how the quarterbacks were playing and you knew it was a 3-win team. You were 100% correct about that. I think you were correct 2 years ago. I guess it's 3 years ago now, when you said that Tyrod Taylor was the best quarterback on the roster in 2022. It was vindicated in my mind in 2023 when he vastly outplayed Daniel Jones on film, by the advanced stats, by the raw stats on that same 2023 team. Leave the debate for other people if they want to. I don't care. Those people probably don't listen to our podcast, and those people who vilified you in a disgusting way, in my opinion, on Twitter when you said that, just for having an opinion, by the way, on the quarterbacks, we'll leave them to the side. They don't listen to the show anyway, I don't think. But my question is, when you look at this quarterback room, Russell Wilson is basically at this point the unquestioned QB1. How do you see this team shaking out, knowing that A, quarterback play pretty much decides wins and losses in this league, and B, Russell Wilson is 36 now?
It's frustrating watching Russell Wilson and knowing what people are saying about Russell Wilson that has nothing to do with Russell Wilson's play.
Yeah.
Because Russell Wilson is a lock first ballot Hall of Famer. And the only reason why people refute that or push back against that is because they view Russell Wilson, the person, a certain way. Or Russell Wilson was putting up Aaron Rodgers numbers in the midst of Aaron Rodgers being Aaron Rodgers, and got a Super Bowl win and got his team to the Super Bowl. I'm saying that to say Russ's demise has been greatly over exaggerated. Now, with that being said, Russell athletically is 36 years old.
Right.
So no longer can he quickly spin out like he did when he was 24, 25, 26 with Seattle, right? And that was a big thing. Spin out, set up, hit the
Yep.
moon shot, right? The arm velocity has dialed back a little bit. Not as many RPMs. I'll use this example too, or this observation. This was OTAs. Now the veterans are out there, and they're working with the receivers, and we're on the back patio, and they're coming at us. And so it was Russ, Jameis, Dart. So Russ gets up there, throws a deep ball. I want to say it was to Wan'Dale Robinson. And Wan'Dale's running, and then it kind of slowly has to turn around and wait for it and then catch it. Jameis gets up there, throws a deep ball, and the receiver has to run through it. Russ gets back up there, clearly seeing the difference in arm, and now he's putting a little bit more oomph into the ball to say, like, hey, I see what you're doing. I could do the same thing, right? But so he probably is cognizant that he can't get the ball to places like he used to with the same velocity. But the mind is still sharp like it is at 25. So he's seeing it, and he's going to have to be a little bit quick with the anticipation. He's still a good decision maker with the ball.
Yep.
We won't know if he's still able to avoid sacks or not take sacks, because we're not seeing really that at practice.
Right.
And that's what we saw in Pittsburgh, him take some sacks. But I think what people talked about, I said this last year during the whole Fields Russell Wilson thing. I was like, it's not even about Fields and Russell. The real culprit is Arthur Smith's play calling,
right,
and design. And so if you take that, look at how Justin Fields looks within his Jet situation, and Russell Wilson with what I've seen so far at Giants camp. So I think the quarterback play will, and I said this pre-draft, having a Russell Wilson is going to allow people to know how good this receiving core really is. Because we've been saying that for 2 years, like, hey, the Giants have some guys out here, but because they can't push the ball deep, if you have guys that literally lift the umbrella off the coverage across the board, but if you can't push it deep, then you relegate it to, hey, they got to catch and run and make something happen after the catch. Wan'Dale Robinson should have a bigger role. And some things that we saw with Wan'Dale Robinson during the training camp and OTAs all throughout his career, but then in the regular season they turn him essentially to a tight end because he got to catch nothing but stop routes. Well, that's not going to be the case now, and they're going to use Wan'Dale Robinson how they were planning to use him when they drafted him.
Oh, I like that.
So it's been cool to see. Russell Wilson helps raise the floor. And the reason why he's the starter is because he's much known. He's a much known commodity in terms of what you're going to get down in, down out. Jameis, while he has those wild moments, you don't know down to down if he's going to turn the ball over. But you still like him in case Russ goes down and you got to go to a veteran starter. Jameis has won a lot of games. And Jameis has that aura about him that guys want to play for. He had to play with 2 days ago with Lil Jordan Humphrey. And Lil Jordan Humphrey made a nice play on a side adjustment, ran a smoke route. Jameis, did the signal, smoke route, boom, done. And then as Lil Jordan Humphrey getting up and getting Jameis and going to the side because this rep was over, Jameis screaming at, hey, Lil Jordan, just like old times. They played together with the Saints. So Jameis keeps everybody loose. Jameis is a fun guy, and then that allows Dart to go in there and then work on this game. So I think the floor is raised. So the run game is going to be better. The passing game is going to be better. It's going to be much more of a complementary offense type of a deal because their defense should be able to apply pressure, which should help out the back end because that's where there's still some question marks on this team.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, when it comes to Jameis Winston, I just wrote this for Big Blue View because Pro Football Focus came out with a list of like 15 players who are, trade candidates in training camp. Now, a lot of that is content. We understand that we're all in the industry, but at the same time, like I'm not one advocating for Jameis Winston to be traded away right now. I want him to be a New York Giant. I want him to help groom Jackson Dart, to get Jackson Dart ready, and also to be there just in case Jackson Dart is not ready and our 36-year-old quarterback goes down. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there just because you mentioned Jameis Winston in such a positive light, because I hear on Twitter and I see on Twitter people talking about that. It's like, no, I want Jameis Winston here in New York. And I just kind of wanted to, I guess, ask you, would you agree with that sentiment? Unless it was a quality pick to trade a player like Jameis Winston, which I don't envision that being bestowed to the Giants. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Emory and Dan?
Well, you don't want to. That's the thing about. That's why drafting Jackson Dart made sense for specifically the Giants, because he's not ready to play, and sometimes you gotta keep yourself from making a bad decision. And that's why you double down on guys that can play right now in terms of veterans.
Right.
So, hey, I don't have to be, I got to protect myself from myself. So, if I don't want sweets, I don't keep sweets in the house. Right. And so same thing. If I don't want to be pressed to push this guy into a role in which he's not ready, we have a backup quarterback that starts some games as one and has a Heisman Trophy. Right. So that type of situation kind of helped the Giants save themselves from themselves. And I think Jameis being a solid, Jameis helps you twofold. One, because he's a glue guy.
Yeah.
He can play. And let's say Russ doesn't want to resign here and go through this whole try quarterback room for another season. Well, now you have a bridge guy in Jameis to yield to Dart. And I think that's why you have to keep Jameis.
Yeah, I'm right there. Just you asked me too, Nick. I'm right there along the same lines as you guys. I mean, for all the reasons you pointed out, but also for the reason, for me at least, of I think Jameis can play. I watched his tape last year, every single game on film, and I understand he throws a lot of interceptions, whatnot. But man, that man throws with more anticipation than all but maybe 10 quarterbacks that I watched on tape last year. And his arm talent is, I think, the best on the currently on the roster. That's the two things I'm looking for. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, Emory, it's really interesting because they signed these two this offseason, how kind of you feel like the narrative on Russell Wilson's been very overstated and overblown. I feel the same with Jameis Winston. I think it's pretty obvious, as we've seen throughout camp, how much he's brought the vibes up. He's a good vibe guy. You want him on your roster. So going into next year, they have him signed for 2 years. There's no I can't, if they traded him, it would be for like a sixth or something. That just is not worth it to me.
It's what's funny about Jameis, man, and this is the unfortunate part about the game of football.
Yeah.
If he doesn't get hurt in New Orleans, they're 5-2. They were beating the Bucks. He gets hurt. That changes the tide of that whole team and franchise. Yep. He never gets that opportunity to start again in that role, because that was his team. Saints probably would have gone to the postseason that year with that team, Sean Payton's last year. And James had a crazy touchdown interception ratio because they had threw like 5 touchdowns in that game against the Packers, right?
And it was like 11-1 or something crazy.
It was crazy, right? And so Sean Payton and Jameis, because he had sat on the side behind Breeze, now he's a starter, and then they're 5-2, and then he gets hurt. And so then you see him with the Browns. One play last year that just really stuck into me is just a peak Jameis. Like, Jameis always is trying to win. And it was a game, I believe, against the Ravens, where he nearly throws the game-losing pick. They were in field goal range already. Yeah. The dude drops the pick. It's like, all right, cool. Crisis averted. Next play, Jameis throws the touchdown with the same right. Like, bro, we already
take the field goal.
Just don't. And he's like, nah, the dude is open. I'm trying to win. That's the type of guy you always want to play with.
I agree.
Even though it can go either way. But and I've always taken the CFL approach to interceptions. I love how the CFL they don't focus on interceptions like we do in the NFL. It's all about, and this is always the case with any turnover, it's about where the interception goes or comes, or when it comes, right? Obviously, you don't want the red zone picks. Those are always bad no matter the league. But if you throw an interception on the 40, whatever, we're going to get the ball right back, right? So you can't, because we put so much emphasis on the mistake as if any mistake in the game is insurmountable. And we've seen some coaches, if a guy turns the ball over, let's say an interception, here comes 7 straight run plays. It's like, nah, let him go back out there and sling it. You know what I'm saying? Like, things happen. So Jameis is someone that can play. He's a young vet, because he's on that 29, 28, 29, 30-ish, I believe. And so you have exactly what you want. This is what good franchises do.
Right.
And I think, to your point, Jameis is always getting a bad rep because it's hard because it's hard to ignore how funny he is. And so people get stuck on that and think he's just he's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like, no, he can actually play. He just also happens to be funny. And so, but he's because people forget, like, his freshman year in college. I know we're going way back, but his freshman year in college, he started, his career. I think he had like 15 straight touchdowns, no picks.
Yeah.
I think he didn't throw his first pick until like week 7 or something. So the dude can play. It's just that sometimes, and we saw going back to that Jameis in New Orleans, that was the first year where he got the vision corrected.
Right.
And so that's when we saw him just completely be a new Jameis. So I've always respected his game, and he understands his role. And he's still out there competing. You see him still out there directing the threes this week. Today, he was directing the threes because he was working primarily with those guys, getting guys lined up and, making some tight window throws, expecting those guys to make plays. He's empowering those guys to make the same plays that the ones would make. So I like Jameis for this team. I think he does a really good job.
Emory, we spoke about the wide receiver, spoke a little bit about Tracy and Cam Scadaboo. I want to touch on the tight ends, though. What are your overall thoughts on the Giants tight end room? And just so you know, we are, with this podcast, primarily me. I'd say 90% me, Dan, not to take anything away from you. Massive Chris Manhertz fans.
Oh, yeah,
I've been advocating for the Giants to sign Chris Manhertz since like 2019. And when we did prior to last year, I was ecstatic about it. I'm glad he's back. Just wanted to put that out there. But what are your opinions of Theo Johnson and just the upside of this tight end room, especially with Dolchik and Fedone on the back end?
Dolchik is the one people forget about. He was really good as a prospect coming out of UCLA. Kind of was banged up with Denver, so he got kind of lost in the shuffle. But that's an underrated player. He's had a really good camp. Theo Johnson's going to be a problem. I think Theo Johnson, being what he is and how he plays, kind of made them be okay with losing Darren Waller, because Theo Johnson has put on really good weight. He's a thicker body guy now, still has that athleticism, that fluidity and movement, and could be the potential bridge between Russ, him, and Neighbors. In case, you really have trying to figure out who's the number 2 receiver, that essentially could be Theo Johnson. But Johnson has also really elevated his game in terms of blocking, in terms of his body and how he looks, and also how he's able to run. Now, when you add in Dulcich and Fedone, and you now this looks like a tight end group, in terms of they can hit you in waves, which also helps the run game, which also helps them be a matchup problem, because Fedone is someone that's young. You could probably bring him along slowly, because Dulcich is someone that has good movement skills, good position blocker, and then Theo Johnson is a guy that could do it all. And if he stays healthy, he's going to have a fantastic season.
Speaking of players staying healthy and hopefully having a fantastic season, to transition to the offensive line, the player that we're all thinking about and talking a lot about is Evan Neal and his transition into guard. Now, Jermaine Illuminor, after practice yesterday, brought up how Evan Neal was moving bodies and he felt the power and the oomph in the combo blocks. And, you see it too. You're moving some bodies. They were moving Roy Robertson Harris. They were moving Darius Alexander. So I just wanted to ask you, first, what do you think of the transition from tackle to guard for a player, and specifically Evan Neal? And secondly, what are your overall impressions of Neal in the 2025 training camp?
Well, I'm glad you asked that about the tackle and guard thing, because a lot of people always just say, well, move him to guard or move him, to center. Obviously, there's differences in all of those things. It's like playing slot versus playing on the outside, whether you're a DB or a corner or a receiver, right? There's a difference. And so when you're playing outside, you have a lot of space. And so if you are a guy that doesn't deal with speed rather well, or twitchiness in terms of like changes direction, being on the outside is a detriment, because now you're going to have to either overextend and chase, or you're going to find yourself being a half second late. And the difference between being in a half second late in the league as opposed to being a half second late in college, there's no recovery. So it turns into a lookout block. And so when you go inside, things happen quicker, Now, for someone that is the size of Evan Neal, because it becomes an advantage because guys usually are dealing with 6'3", 6'4" guards. Neal is 6'6". You know what I'm saying? And so now those shorter, quicker D tackles, they don't have the same leverage ability versus a guy that's bigger, longer, and get his hands on you quickly. And we saw that in one-on-ones where Neal just kind of like stonewall folks, and with good proper technique, knee bend. So it's also rare to see somebody, his height have good knee bend and play with leverage. But this is why you draft the Evan Neal so high, because he played across the line at Bama. So he got cross-trained. So this is nothing new for him. What he spoke today to us after practice, and it was like, I asked him about his mental state. He was like, I'm healthier now, so I'm in a better, and that was the whole thing. And a lot of folks, he was another one that was getting a bad rep. I felt like I see this, what I saw with the Giants roster is what I've seen with the Chargers roster, where they're going to go through every position and blame that player before realizing they should have the quarterback is the problem. Now, I'm not saying Justin Herbert is Daniel Jones, but I'm saying Justin Herbert does more damage than blaming everybody else, right? So when you blame an Evan Neal, and then folks make him the reason why, you are the reason why we're losing, and it's like, man, I'm just one dude, you know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to play through an injury,
right?
And I'm trying to show you that I'm not garbage, and now I'm hurting myself. I'm aggravating the injury. I'm making it worse, so now that part of the whole vibes are different. Now that he's healthy, mental state is better. He's inside. He's embracing it because he's played it before, and he's excelling. And so now you have an offensive line that is set up to have success. And I've said this before. I've always said the offensive line that's the biggest scapegoat in the country. Like anything that's wrong in this country, blame the offensive line, right? And so, Tyrod Taylor had the same offensive line, and when he got in the game, you didn't hear jack about nobody being, the O-line not blocking is block, blah, 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 block. Same dudes. So with Evan Neal going inside and being able to really spearhead the run game, and when you think about what Andrew Thomas is going to be when he get back healthy out there, this offensive line is going to be vastly improved because you have a quarterback that has a little bit better pocket presence than Daniel Jones did, and the run game is going to be better. And we already see glimpses of the run game being better.
Yeah.
With the guys, and Tracy is, another year playing a position. Scatterable, good feel for the run game. So you're seeing those two guys really, start to find that running back rhythm. And so this is because now you don't even talk about the center no more. So again, the offensive line never was as bad as folks made it out to be, but it's hard to bring some, rational thoughts to, emotional takes where everybody's just screaming about, because, and I get it, fans are, emotional in terms of how they view it. But if you zoom out a little bit and see, like, man, this one guy has caused all of this problem. And what, now you remove that guy from the equation, and now everything looks significantly better around him.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it seems like to us too. I do want to ask you, following up on the run game a little bit, because it sounds to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you do feel like this team has a higher ceiling with Evan Neal at guard versus Greg Van Roten at this point. So with that in mind, and with the idea that we have seen some good action in the run game from the Giants once they've started to put the pads on this week, is that necessarily the Giants' run game taking a step forward, or does that mean we have a bigger problem than we realized with the run defense? Because the run defense was not good last year, and it was way bad when Dexter Lawrence came off the field, both after he got hurt and was put on IR, but even those snaps where they had to just spell him because he can't play every snap. Where are you at with that? Like, what does it look like more to you from that outside perspective?
I don't see a problem with the run defense. I would say differently if, they were popping runs. Like, it was like, whoa, this, like when Saquon was here during training camp, how many times we saw him just rip off just gash. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but you don't see that now. You're seeing more a methodical. Okay, yeah, they got 2 yards on that one. Oh, they're trying to get a crack toss going on this one. Oh, that was a great cutback and read by Tracy or Scatterbo or Singletary. But it's few and far in between. But so it's not the run defense. It's just that sometimes, good's going to beat good.
Right.
And that's what's been happening up front.
It's a good thing. That's a good thing to hear, by the way. Good for a Giants team.
Right, because the linebackers have been getting good run fits. And we kind of asked Brian Burns, Nick, you was there the other day where he talked about like, yeah, okay, we got to butt up with these dudes. You know what I'm saying? So they want to keep their legs pumping, and it's like, all right, we kind of we have to let you go. We're not going to bring you to the ground. But I like the fact that the attentiveness of these backers are right where they're supposed to be, and making plays, and that's kind of what you want. Again, we'll see what happens in Buffalo, but this is a good sign. Now, the question for me on defense is corner.
Yeah,
because I have no issues with Nubin. Has been around the ball a lot. Paulson Adebo has done a really good job so far as well, and it's been interesting to see how Banks and Flott have been competing. Banks worked primarily with the 2s today and the 3s in some cases. But they've, then he'll flip around and then he'll go with the previous day he was with the 1s or whatnot. So they're working both guys in and trying to see. So that's a concern because they can't afford any injuries there. Sure. I think that's where you think before camp is over, they're going to probably go and grab another guy at corner just to have out there, because you don't want to go into a situation where you're worried about the depth there. But safety play, I think, is solid.
Emory, so I want to ask you before we let you go and get out of here, and thank you for being so gracious with your time, because Dan and I, we've talked a lot about this pass rush. Everybody's kind of talking about this pass rush, and since you're so attuned to what's going on around the NFL, I agree with the sentiment that Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns both articulated. We haven't done shit. It doesn't matter. But on paper, when you're looking at this pass rush with Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, Chauncey Golston, like it's very deep. What do you think the sky, like what is the sky here? If we're actually looking at it, what is the ceiling of this pass rush if the Giants offense can give just minimal leads into the fourth quarter and allow this defense to pin their ears back? What do you think the ceiling is for this pass rush?
This could be a 45 sack type front. I think what people are underrating about this unit is how versatile they are in terms of getting to the quarterback. Like each one of these guys, Thibodeau, Burns, Carter, has multiple ways to get to the quarterback. And so that alone is a challenge throughout the course of a game. So if you are always a power rusher or you're always a speed guy, you know what I'm saying, you kind of can understand what's coming and get coached up and kind of get better in trying to defend that. But when all of these guys can rush in different ways, it kind of creates a problem. And what Abdul Carter creates is a situation where, I always say this with Micah Parsons, people forget he sat out that last year in college. Didn't play at all, kind of like Jamar Chase didn't play. Right. So we didn't see Micah Parsons. The last time we saw Micah Parsons play college football, he was a stand-up linebacker. He was an off-ball backer.
True.
So when he got to the league, everybody was like, well, wow, he's a tremendous pass rusher. Well, we didn't see that on tape at Penn State. We've seen Abdul Carter do both on tape. So we have a better idea of what he can potentially be. So some people say, well, you take Kayvon. No, you don't take Kayvon off the field. Like Kayvon is good in his own right. You could stand up, Carter and have him carry tight ends or have him carry a back or have him blitz an A gap or a B gap. And now you get all three guys on the field and you keep all three guys on the field. And if Darius Alexander gets up to speed, because he's another one that has, good upfield pressure in a combination of moves to get to the quarterback, now you have a problem if you're offense. Because usually on offense, you have maybe two good pass protectors on an offensive line. Two that you could say, okay, if we were going to do one-on-one, we have two guys. You need four if you're going to face the Giants and think you're going to block them up. And it would create a situation, if they trust their corners a little bit more so, just thinking schematically, then you probably see a lot more like this front. And I'm just saying like this would be the front Wink Martindale would salivate to have.
Yes, that's such a good point.
Because he would crowd the line of scrimmage, and it just and when you have that level of length, athleticism, and power,
yes,
the ball, your quick game has to be flawless. So I don't know if Bowen right.
I was going to say, why can't Bowen just takes a little page out of that blueprint?
Because you got to trust the corners, and you can kind of trust your safeties. Like this is when you kind of wish. This is when you kind of do this a lot in college. Like, oh man, I wish they would have had this guy with this team and this. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of wish Xavier McKinney was with this defense.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And you kind of wish a young Corey Webster was with this pass rush. And guys that could take the ball away, right? So that's the beauty of that's why you kind of hope guys nail the draft, so you can kind of eliminate these problems. Because now you got to be Bowen has to be cognizant of how often I get pressure if I don't have the full-fledged trust of the guys on the back end.
I love it. He's Emory Hunt. You can find him on Twitter at FBALL Game Plan. And I know all of you ask us during draft season. I mean, it's March, it's April. We're doing a podcast today. You're like, I need more. And I know you guys can only cover a certain amount of players. Where can I find information on all these players? He's your guy. I'm telling you, go to him and you're going to get information on more Giants draft picks than any other place, because he's going to hit all the UDFAs that end up competing during these days of training camp. And if you're here and you're listening to this show, we know that you're watching and following every single camp practice. This is your passion, just like us. So this is the guy to go to. Check him out. He's unbiased. He's unbelievable what he does. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, Emory, because you have your own takes on everything. It is not like literally across the board. And I mean, even the top guys, the top 50, the top 100, that's your take based on your evaluation. And I have so much respect for that, because in my opinion, not everyone does that. Not everyone can do that. So thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your night. And to everybody else listening in, forgot to ask at the beginning of the show, and this is on me. I got to remember to do this, Nick. Hit that like button right now. Hover your hand over the mouse. I always say it takes 2 seconds, but it helps us so much. Leave a comment in the comment section. You guys have done a great job with that in our last 2 videos, and they both popped on YouTube. So please, again, do that. And otherwise, have a great rest of your night. We'll talk to you soon.